Hey guys, welcome to the Cast and Spear podcast. My name is John, and we have back on the show Matt Hong, Mr. California himself, and we're going to shift gears a little bit. Yesterday we talked about dry aging fish, and that was a great episode. You guys should check it out. Today we're going to talk about shallow water blackouts. This is probably one of the scariest things that Spearos have to encounter potentially if things don't go their way that day. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having me back, John.
Yeah, dude, let's talk about it. I think it's a little bit of story time. Do you want to kind of recap what happened the day at the rigs a couple years ago?
Ooh, yes, I do. I mean, I don't really, but I need to for the community.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. So first and foremost, I got to say thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for being an awesome human being. And thank you for freaking saving my life. So back, I don't know, about a year, 2 years ago, me and John went out to the oil rigs. I think this was like the second or third time diving with you. John, do you remember, John?
Yeah, it was pretty early in my spearfishing life, to be honest. Yeah, I think it was like our
Yeah,
second time.
it's crazy, man. Second time going out. And I'm telling this story because when it comes to blacking out, everyone thinks it's not going to happen to me. I mean, that's a cliche everyone said before, right? But secondly, on top of that, it's like people who are in the sport are relatively extreme sportsmen, you know? And I tend to get the feeling that there's an attitude of, well, even if I black out, like, so what? You know, I'll be okay, or who cares if I die? You know, like kind of like that attitude, that bravado. But I just wanted to share the story because it's a reminder of the fact that it can happen to you. It probably will happen to you or someone you know at one point. And secondly, the most important lesson that I learned from this story is that you're passing, or an accident like that, to pass away in this way is not as glorious as you think it would be, or it's not something that you should take lightly. It's something that you should learn from, and that is a serious, risk, and also, a serious impact to not only you, but those around you. So going back to it, me and John, second time going out, and we head over to the oil rigs off of Los Angeles. And I was super stoked. I was in the danger zone of my diving career because, I was relatively confident with my skills and abilities, but I wasn't aware of like how far is too far and what's dangerous. We're out of the oil rigs, and the oil rigs is not the place you want to black out at. Just the year before, someone was telling me, the captain on the boat was like, yeah, man, it sucks, bro. Like, the scuba diver just died out here. They barely found his body like 2 weeks afterwards because it's a 200 or a 300 foot bottom at the oil rigs. It's kind of crazy. You look down and it's just pylons that lead into the dark abyss. But, being younger in my career, I decided, all right, well, I'm going to go out there. I want to see what's there. And I know that there's big sheephead out there. Oh, well, sheephead out there? The secret's out. I don't even know if they're out there anymore because it's been a while. But yeah, so me and John are doing good. There's 3 people. We're doing a good rotation. And it starts to fall apart as soon as we start seeing fish. So I start seeing fish, and I'm diving off in another direction. And without me knowing, our third partner, Darren, had swam off in another direction. And that left John there in the middle looking at us like, yo, who do I just go and spot right now? And, that was a mistake one already. When it comes to incidents like this, you realize that it's a culmination of mistakes that are made to lead up to this instance. So you can call it an accident, like for me, it's easier for me to just, it was just an accident. But in reality, if you really look back at it, it's a series of missteps that lead to this. So I go off in one direction, I take a drop, and at this time, prior to this, we were actually picking off scallops from the oil rigs. So I had a lobster bag or game bag around my hip, and in my head, I knew that like that was a liability. Like, I'm diving deep, and there's a lot of stuff around. Like there's the pylons that have rocks growing out of them, and you can hit them on your head coming up, and they could get stuck. Like, I knew putting on the game bag was already a risk at the oil rigs. But instead, I decided, well, I know it's a risk, so okay, well, just be aware of the fact that if it does get caught up, take your knife out and cut it off. You'll be fine, is what I told myself. And so I take that dive, Darren's in one direction. John's up above. He doesn't know who to look for. I take a drop. I dive a little bit deeper than I was comfortable diving at the time. So I went down to 60 and then came back up. I was about to complete my dive. And then I ascended about maybe 5 to 10 feet. At about 50 to 55 feet, I saw a big school of fish down below me. So I felt good. I still had some breath in my tanks. So I decided, okay, I'm going to go for these fish right now. So I dropped down, redescend. So I was at 60, went up to 55, 50, and then redescended back down to 65 feet. Saw the fish, lined it up, took the shot. Perfect shot. Went straight to the fish, right behind the gill plate. And at this point, I'm like, all right, cool. Time to head up to the surface. I'm starting to kick up. And this fish is going nuts. Like, it's a big sheephead, So he's peeling line off my reel. And at about like 40 to 35 feet, I see the handle on the reel snag and get binded with my game bag. And like, it's continuing to spin. And as it's continuing to spin, I'm ascending. And as I'm ascending, it's continuing to get like more and more tangled in the reel. I'm like, oh, fuck. And I look up and I still got like 30 feet of water to clear before I make it to the surface. And at this point, I'm kicking, and I'm not going anywhere. So I'm like, oh, fuck. So I take out my knife, and just like in my head, it's like, okay, time to put into the plan in action that I thought like might possibly happen into action. So I take my knife out. I'm starting to trying to cut my weight, my bag off my waist. And I'm cutting, and nothing's happening. And at this point, like, the panic sets in. Just like, oh, dude, like, is this gonna be it? Is this the end? And by some stroke of God, the fish untangles itself from the pylon, and I'm able to drag everything: the game bag, my gun, the reel, the fish, and the shaft. Drag everything up with me to the top. And as soon as I break the surface, I see John. I reach out to my hand to John, and I'm like signaling to him, like, hey, like, I need help, bro. And I come up, break the surface. In my head, the sequence of events went: signal to John, break the surface, and yell, woo! That was close. But when you actually go back and review the GoPro footage, I signal to John, break the surface, fall back onto my back, and John catches me, and then I come back like maybe 8, 9, 10 seconds later, and then woo! Realize, like, well, that was close. So I don't know. That was kind of a crazy experience. John, what do you recall from when you saw me coming up?
Well, I think going back to where you said that when you go with 3 people, make sure you're clear on who's diving, in the rotation, because like you're saying, Darren. It's the funny thing, after this whole thing was over, Darren came to me and was like, dude, why weren't you watching me? I almost didn't make it himself, right? And I was like, what are we talking about, guys? Like, this isn't a joke here. I had to basically pick one or the other, and I picked right. That's a coin flip, right? And this is a real 50-50 chance. For myself, the water viz wasn't that great. So by the time I saw Matt's eyeballs, it was probably about 10 or so feet down, but he looked exactly like some of the videos I watched, because I took Ted Hardy's like freediving safety course back in the day before I took a freediving the certification, and I was like, oh, this looks very similar to those guys in the video. So I was there. I knew he had enough momentum to come up, but then as soon as he got to the surface, it was just like head back and then starting to sink. And I was like, oh, shit. And I just grabbed him. Like, I dove down a little bit, grabbed under his armpits. And I'm like kicking as hard as I can, because I, at the time, had some cheap plastic fins. And I'm like, what do I do? Because I didn't remember all the special protocol of like getting them on their back and kind of lifting their mask up and blow, tap, touch, all that kind of stuff they teach you in the course. I was like, hell no. I just grabbed him and threw him against the pylon. And I just kicked, and then was just like, oh my God, he's dead. I was like, no. So I'm just like kicking, using the pylon in my legs, and I'm like, he's got to wake up. And then all of a sudden it goes, whew, that was crazy. And I'm like, dude, did you black out? And the first thing he says is like, nah, man, where's my gun? And I was like, if you don't know where your gun is, you blacked out, man. I was like, oh, come on. But I mean, at the end of the day, we can laugh about this now, but I'm happy that it happened and everybody's safe early in my dive career, because I was like, oh, this otherwise I would have been like everybody else. I just like adventure stuff and I'm gonna push the limits, but this is something that we all should be aware of at least, and have a good buddy system. It's not that complicated. It's not less manly to have buddies, you know.
Yeah, man. And like I said, I can't thank you enough. I was gonna do your wedding. This is for the man who saved my life. But going back to it, it's like I'm also really glad that it happened at the time it did in my dive career, because I think generally how extreme sports are going to be experienced is like you have your beginner phase, right? Where people are pretty still learning the ropes, so they're pretty cautious, and then you get that intermediate phase where you just start trying to push the limit, and then something bad happens, And in this sport, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to have a second chance, and I'm so lucky that I did. And that's why I wanted to share this with everybody. It's because, you don't realize the value of being able to make a mistake and not pay for it with your life, and like to be able to learn from it. So I want everybody else out there who's listening is like, say like, it's happened to somebody and they want you to know that it can happen to you, and you need to take every measure that you can to not let things like this happen. And yeah.
So guys, I will put links in the show notes on Ted Hardy's course. I think it's great if you don't have a chance to take a freediving course. If you do have the funds, I recommend either FII or PFI. I know the OC Spiros have a scholarship that will cover almost all of it, or if not 100%. So there's almost no excuse to not take a freediving course. I've taken it. I thought it was really helpful, even after what you can read online and seeing videos. But Matt, I really do appreciate the story, and I think everybody's going to be able to internalize this so that they don't have to experience it, hopefully, for themselves.
Yeah, man. And like before I go, I got to hammer in 2 more points, man, because this experience definitely was something that changed my life. So like the first thing is the blackout itself wasn't scary. To let people know, what the experience is like. If you're listening to this, I'm sure, if you're listening to this up until this point, you're probably curious as to what it was like, right? And what I want to let you guys know is, the experience of blacking out itself is not scary, because it's like you didn't even know. Like John said, I came up and he asked me, "Did you black out?" I was like, "No, I had no idea I'd blacked out." But the scariest part, and the thing that I think that like really messed with me mentally, was knowing that if I had passed away that day, that I wouldn't have been able to even know that I passed away that day, and not get a chance to like set things right and say goodbye and to leave this world how I want to leave it. That's one of the scariest things that I think I learned from this experience. And I hope that if you're listening to this, that you really take that into consideration, how scary it is to say goodbye or to be gone without having to have said goodbye. So there's that. Yeah.
We're just happy that you're still on this planet, man, for a long, long time.
I'm happy too, man. Can't wait for more adventures, my guy.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one. Hey, one more thing before you go. Do you like this podcast? Well, we're trying to keep it ad-free as much as possible. And to do that, we just ask if you could support us. That'd be amazing. Just head over to shop.castandspear.com or consider contributing to our Patreon page. Thanks so much in advance. See you on the next one. Bye.